Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti channel by Swami Nikhilananda. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, to Ram Parivar and all sages and saints, and to each of you divine soul watching today's satsang. Currently we are studying the scripture Mysticism of Ramayana. Commentary is by my Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So yesterday we were studying the planning of Kaikeyi and how Manthara manipulated her. So let's proceed further. Manthara reminded Queen Kaikeyi that she had two boons and it was time to ask King Dashratha for the two boons. So first, that Bharata be coronated instead of her brother Rama, and second, that Rama be banished into the forest for 14 years. So these were the two boons they came up with at that auspicious time to derail Dashratha's plans of making Rama the king. By these two boons, said Manthara, Kaushalya will be deprived of all the joy she was expecting the next day at Rama's coronation. Manthara further suggested that Kaikeyi retire that very night to the Kop Griha or the sulking room. So this is what the kings, queens at the time used to do. Since they were very affluent, they used to have a separate area called the sulking room. So if the queen was there, the king would automatically know that something's wrong and the queen is upset. So when she entered there to bring her grievance, hearing that she had entered that room afflicted by with some problem, Dashratha would quickly come to see her and try to ease her difficulty. So that was the plan. Eager to please her, he would surely pledge to grant any boon that she had requested. At that time, after the king had taken an oath in the name of Rama to grant any boons, Kaikeyi would make her request. According to plan, the king came to Kaikeyi's palace, eager to inform her about the coronation that was to take place the next day. He was sure that she would be delighted as everybody else in the realm. To his surprise, however, he was informed that she had thrown herself in despair into the sulking room. He hurried to the side of his beloved queen and then tried to find out the cause of her grief. When she indicated that granting her the two promised boons would bring her back to normalcy, he readily pledged to do so. At that moment, Kaikeyi made her request for Bharata to become successor to the throne and Rama to be banished to the forest in the garb of an ascetic for a period of 14 years. Hearing those burning words of Kaikeyi, the king was shocked with grief and he became speechless. Dashratha pleaded with Kaikeyi and promised to recall Bharata to the kingdom and crown him as king, even though he was slightly younger than Rama. At the time, Bharata and Shatrughana were at their grandpa's place, Kaikeyi's parents, because they had summoned them to spend some time with them. And the time of coronating Rama, according to the astrological signs, was very auspicious. And so the priests and the spiritual preceptors suggested that even though Bharata and Shatrughana were not there at the time, but to go ahead with the coronation and that we would let them know later, but they didn't want that auspicious time to go away. Little did they know what was to come, what was in store. So Dashratha pleaded with Kaikeyi and promised to recall Bharata. Then he tried to convince her that Rama should not go to the forest because he could not bear that separation from his son. He was too attached to Rama. However, Kaikeyi taunted her husband and would not be moved from her resolve because she had saved King Dashratha's life in one of the previous wars, and so king was very appreciative and happy that she had fought so valiantly, Kaikeyi had, and that he would grant, and he granted her two boons. So she took a rain check. She did not use the boons at the time, so she says she would ask them when the time was appropriate, and she picked this inauspicious time, such an auspicious time, and she had these two very, very painful boons that she asked King Dashratha to fulfill. So, and Kaikeyi taunted her husband that she would not be moved. Seeing the hopelessness of the situation, the king was immersed in grief. He knew that he could not break his promise to Kaikeyi without sacrificing his honor as a king. So at that time, these words meant so much. That they would give up their lives rather than go back from their promise. This is called dharma. Dharmo rakshati dharma. So which means that ethical values were of the highest importance. So he was shattered and heartbroken at the prospect of losing Rama from his side. Yet he felt helpless, didn't know what to do. When morning came, Rama was summoned to the palace, and he found his father lying on the floor as if enshrouded by death. Kaikeyi told Rama about the boons she had requested and explained that the king was torn between his intense affection for Rama and his honorable duty to grant those boons as promised. Thus, she suggested Rama should relieve his father of his suffering and simply renounce the throne and quickly remove himself to the forest. So, imagine what Lord Rama must have gone through at the time. Instead of being, not only will you not be coronated king, now you have to give up all the royal clothes and the palace and go to live in the forest for 14 years. Hearing these words of Kaikeyi, Rama internally smiled and, with the words that were gentle and compassionate, said, "O mother, that son is truly fortunate who is able to please his parents." Imagine such harsh words coming from Kaikeyi, and yet he replied in such a soothing way. "And today I have the possibility of pleasing you both, mother and father," he said. "Who could be more privileged than me? Further, I will be so delighted to meet all the sages and saints in the forest. Personally, going into the forest rather than ruling the kingdom would have been my choice, but since now it is my father's command and you have given your permission, what could be better?" So, what a beautiful way to accept such a harsh sentence, and yet with so much grace. And this is why Ramayana is now translated in so many countries, and it's still enacted, and it teaches us how to live our life with moral values, ethical values, and so on. So, and Bharata, who is dearer to me than my life, will be the king, Rama said. Instead of feeling bad or jealous, he felt genuinely good. All good things have come to me on this very day, he said. So that teaches us during adverse circumstances how should we react, how should we position ourselves. There is generally a deeper meaning, a deeper process that we have to go through, and every adversity makes us stronger. And an adversity that makes us introspect is much better than a prosperity that makes us foolish and arrogant. And that's very important. So that adversity is actually a prosperity in disguise that improves us, and that prosperity that makes us arrogant and pompous and forget about our spiritual practices is actually not a prosperity at all. It is an adversity disguised as prosperity. So very important to understand these distinctions. Most worldly people just want to win a lottery and just have fun, not realizing what it does to your evolution. So, then seeing his father stirring back to consciousness, Rama spoke reassuringly to him again and expressing his delight in carrying out the boons, and then took his leave to the palace. When the people of Ayodhya learnt about the change in plans, they were struck with amazement and sorrow. Many attempted to give wise counsel to Kaikeyi, but to no avail. While all the men and women of Ayodhya were sunk in grief, Rama's face bloomed with joy, and there was an increasing sense of delight in his heart. So he was not faking it. He was not externally saying those things and not meaning it in his heart. So his thought, words, and deed were aligned, and he was genuinely at ease, Lord Rama. With folded hands, he approached his mother Kaushalya to inform her of the recent events and to receive her permission to depart from the kingdom and enter into the forest. Although she was greatly shocked and dismayed, Kaushalya realized her sense of duty and, overstepping her own affection and attachment for Rama, gave her permission for him to enter forest life. So instead of a very joyous festive occasion, it became a very sad, somber time where they had to, the whole palace and all this royalty had to handle this adverse circumstance. So I hope you are enjoying the nectar of this wisdom from the mysticism of Ramayana, and we will continue this satsang tomorrow. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.